Black Janitor saw the symptoms. Everyone ignored and ended up saving the life of the millionaire CEO. The skyscraper glittered against the night sky, its glass walls glowing with the last remnants of the day's power. Inside the top-floor office, papers lay scattered across a wide oak desk, glowing under the harsh fluorescent lights. Veronica Hale, the CEO of one of the city's most powerful firms, sat in her crimson blazer, head bowed over contracts she insisted on reviewing alone. To her, sleep was a luxury she hadn't earned. Down the hall, the night shift janitor, Marcus Reed, pushed his cart slowly, mop bucket squeaking with every turn. He had been working these floors for 7 years, invisible to nearly everyone. Executives walked past him as though he were part of the furniture. Meetings spilled out into the hallways, words about billion-dollar deals echoing in the air, but never once had anyone asked Marcus's name. Tonight was no different, except for what he noticed. As Marcus emptied the trash from the finance office, he saw Veronica through the glass wall of her corner suite. She leaned back suddenly, her hand pressed to her temple. For a brief moment, her body went rigid. When she pulled the tissue from her nose, he spotted the crimson stain. She crumpled it quickly, shoving it into the bin as though embarrassed. Marcus frowned. A nosebleed this late? He thought of how pale she looked earlier that week when she had brushed past him in the lobby, sunglasses hiding tired eyes. He'd seen her stumble slightly on her heels once, too. Everyone else had been too busy chasing her signature to notice. He wheeled his cart forward. From inside, he could hear muffled voices on speakerphone. Her executives still pressing her for last-minute numbers. Even now, she kept her voice steady, commanding. But Marcus's instincts told him something was wrong. Minutes later, he returned past her door. She was slumped deeper in her chair, her skin glistening with sweat under the office lights. The tissue she held was soaked with more blood, streaks down her wrist. Still, her colleagues on the call didn't pause. They rattled on about deadlines while their boss quietly suffered. Marcus hesitated. He was just the janitor. People like him didn't step inside offices like that unless called. He thought of all the times he'd been told, "Don't interrupt meetings, just clean when it's quiet." His job was to stay invisible. But when he saw Veronica's hand trembling as she tried to type, his chest tightened. Her head jerked once, twice, then her body gave way. The phone clattered from the desk, voices shouting from the speaker. Marcus dropped his mop. Miss Hale! He rushed in without thinking. She was barely conscious, her breath shallow, a streak of blood running from her nose down to the collar of her white blouse. Against the sharp red of her blazer, the sight was terrifying. Her eyes fluttered. "Don't call them," she whispered, her voice thin, strained. "They'll think I'm weak." Marcus knelt, steadying her. His heart pounded in his chest, fear clamping down on his throat. "Ma'am, you're not weak. You need help. Now." But no one else came. The speakerphone still buzzed. Her executives still asking questions, irritated at the silence, not realizing what was happening. Nobody rushed to her side. Nobody had seen the signs. The weight loss, the dizziness, the nosebleeds. Nobody cared enough to notice. Nobody but Marcus. "Stay with me," he muttered, pressing tissues gently to her nose, trying to slow the bleeding. He thought of his mother, who had collapsed years ago from untreated hypertension because nobody listened until it was almost too late. He refused to watch it happen again, not on his watch. Veronica gasped, her head rolling to the side. Panic shot through Marcus. He lowered her carefully to the floor, his massive hands trembling as he checked her airway. She was still breathing, but weak, faint. He pressed his ear to her chest, counting each shallow rise and fall. God, don't do this. He looked around desperately. His radio left on the cart in the hall. His phone still in his pocket. But would they believe him? A janitor, alone with a powerful CEO, her clothes blood-stained. Suspicion could fall hard and fast. Still, he pulled his phone out, hands shaking, dialing emergency services. 911, what's your emergency? This is Marcus Reed. I'm a janitor at Hale Tower, 58th floor. The CEO, she's collapsed, bleeding from the nose, breathing weak. Please, hurry. The dispatcher's calm tone gave him instructions. Keep her airway clear, tilt her head slightly, watch her pulse. Marcus followed each word like scripture, his own fear held back by sheer determination. Veronica stirred faintly, whispering again. Why, are you here? Marcus swallowed, eyes burning. Because everyone else ignored you, but I didn't. The sirens in the distance gave him a flicker of hope, but in that office, time felt endless. He pressed his palm against her hand, grounding her, grounding himself. He was just the janitor, the man no one noticed, but tonight, in the tower of glass and steel, he was the only one who had seen her slipping away. And now, her life rested in his hands. Stay with me, he whispered. They're coming. Just breathe, ma'am. Please. Her eyes cracked open briefly, glazed but focused on him. For a second, Marcus saw not the untouchable CEO, but a woman terrified of losing control. Then her lashes closed again, her head tilting. The office doors slammed open. 2 paramedics rushed in, guided by building security. Step back, one commanded. But Marcus didn't move until they were kneeling beside her. She lost consciousness 2 minutes ago, Marcus said, his voice surprisingly steady. Started with nosebleeds. She's been pale and dizzy for weeks. Nobody paid attention. The paramedic glanced at him sharply, half surprised at his detail, half grateful. They worked quickly, checking vitals, placing an oxygen mask, prepping a stretcher. Veronica's breathing steadied under their care. As they lifted her, Marcus felt a crushing wave of relief, his knees weak. But just as he turned to follow, a sharp voice cut through the room. What the hell is going on here? A group of executives spilled from the hallway, expensive suits, polished shoes, and eyes wide with shock. They froze at the sight of their boss being wheeled away. The janitor crouched beside her chair, blood-stained tissues scattered across the desk. One of them, a middle-aged man with slick hair, pointed a finger. What did you do to her? The accusation hit Marcus like a punch. He stood slowly, his uniform damp, his hands trembling. She collapsed. I called 911. I tried to keep her stable. The man sneered. You expect us to believe you? Enough, one of the paramedics snapped. This man likely saved her life. She was minutes from respiratory failure. If he hadn't intervened, you'd be planning a funeral instead of acting shocked. The room fell silent. Marcus looked around, meeting the stunned faces of people who had walked past him for years without a second glance. Some lowered their eyes, guilt prickling at their silence. They had all ignored the signs, the blood, the fatigue, the small collapses she brushed off. Marcus didn't linger. He followed the stretcher to the elevator, ignoring the whispers behind him. At the hospital, Veronica was rushed into emergency care. Hours passed before a doctor emerged, adjusting his glasses. She had a hypertensive crisis. Severe blood pressure spike led to vessel rupture in her nose and almost her brain. Whoever called it in saved her. Marcus sat in the waiting room, still in his gray uniform, mopping gloves stuffed in his pocket. He exhaled, relief shaking his chest. The doctor added, "She'll recover, but she needs rest, treatment, and to stop ignoring the warning signs." When Veronica finally woke the next morning, her eyes drifted across the room until they found Marcus sitting in a chair by the window. He had almost dozed off but straightened immediately. "You stayed," she murmured through the oxygen mask. He nodded. "Didn't feel right to leave?" A weak smile touched her lips. "You noticed when no one else did?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably, scratching his jaw. "I just couldn't ignore it." Her eyes glistened. For a woman who had built an empire by hiding her vulnerabilities, admitting weakness wasn't easy. Yet here she was, alive because the janitor refused to walk past. 2 weeks later, Veronica returned to her office, this time against doctor's advice, but with an oxygen monitor clipped to her finger. The building buzzed with whispers, not about a deal, not about her power, but about Marcus. He had been called into her office that morning. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in hand, unsure if he was in trouble. Veronica rose from her chair, dressed in another crimson blazer, though her face was softer now, touched by humility. "Marcus," she said firmly, "you saved my life. You saw what everyone else ignored. That makes you more valuable than half the people in this building." He shook his head. "I just did what anyone should have done." "No," she countered, eyes sharp. "What everyone else didn't do." The silence hung heavy before she added, "From today on, you're not just invisible here. I want you working directly under building health and safety. You'll answer only to me." Marcus blinked, stunned. For the first time in years, someone looked at him not as the janitor, not as the man who swept the floors, but as the man who had saved the CEO. That night, as Marcus pushed his cart one last time down the gleaming hallways, executives actually paused to greet him. Some muttered thanks. Others avoided his gaze, ashamed of what they had ignored. He didn't care for their recognition. What mattered was that Veronica Hale was alive, not because she was powerful, not because she was rich, but because someone finally cared enough to notice the symptoms everyone else dismissed, and because a janitor refused to look away. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.